Hello and welcome. Welcome to the National Maritime Museum Greenwich. I'm Elma and this is the last in the series. This is your story too. Before we begin, if you are new to webinars, just a quick bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions or any comments at any point during the session, please type them into the chat box, which you see below, and I'll put them to our speaker this evening. Supporting us on all things Zoom this evening is my colleague Euphemia. Thanks, Euphemia. And just to let you know as well that we've been having a few glitches. Well, I've been having a few glitches with my internet today. So if anything happens and I suddenly just freeze, then I know Gail has lots of stories to tell you and she'll keep going. So please, if that happens, just keep watching and we'll be back. And as I said, Gail has got lots of stories. So right then, so boats, as we know, are part of the maritime cultural landscape, and this series has aimed to highlight their significance to communities and tell some of the personal narratives embodied in the boats themselves. My guest this evening is Gail McGarva, a builder of boats and a storyteller who is tapping into the deeper significance of traditions of boats within the UK culture. Gail has received many awards for her work, including the British Empire Medal in recognition for her services to clinker boat building and heritage crafts. And she's also been awarded the Lord Balfour Prize for exceptional achievement in craft. She is currently traveling the country with Disappearing Lines, which is a one-day workshop which gives participants the opportunity to try their hand at two key processes in traditional boat building. And these are steam bending and copper rivet fastening. Two of these workshops are happening in the museum this Friday and Saturday. So welcome, Gail. It's lovely to see you.
Hello, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Ah, it was great. So first things, how are the workshops going? And what was the impetus for the workshops?
Well, really, my specialist area is working boats that are in danger of extinction, sadly. And that's really the spark for Disappearing Lines. The title echoes the fact that these boats are fast disappearing before our eyes. And I wanted to make links with maritime museums and organisations across England to look at different types of vessels in each area that might be under threat, but also to bring to life the craft of traditional wooden boat building through these one-day workshops.
So you've been going around the country to museums and places like that, like you're coming to us this week. What kind of feedback have you had from the people who've been doing the workshops?
Well, it's been amazing. Every group's been totally different. I've worked from 8 years old, participants of 8 years old up to 80. Wow. So it's been wonderful, an amazing mix. And some people have a link with boats already. Others, no link at all, just curious and wishing to learn some new skills. And yeah, it's been a real privilege to have met so many wonderful people, and they create what I call ghost ships during the workshops, which represent the craft that is disappearing. And as you said earlier, it embodies two main processes of traditional wooden boat building, the steam bent oak and the copper riveting. And so each participant at the end of the day goes away with their completed ghost ship. And it's just been wonderful. Every ship is very kind of influenced by its maker, and yeah, the groups have been fantastic.
And one of the nice things about it as well is people can come to this without any previous experience in doing anything with wood or boat building, right?
That's right. Yes, yes. I tutor and demonstrate the skills through the day. And yeah, some people have never used a drill before. And yeah, by the end of the day, they're they're much more confident.
Great. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be there on Friday. But also, what for you has been the best part of doing the workshops? I mean, because lots of different things come out of it, and I know part of it is storytelling, and you tell stories, and also you invite people to bring things along to tell their stories.
Well, I mean, each workshop's multi-layered really in terms of the richness. I mean, actually visiting the host venues themselves, that's been a wonderful experience. The different influences on the craft in each area, and then the riches that the participants themselves bring. But also just to see people go on a journey through one day in terms of developing their skills and sharing the narratives attached to the vessels that I know about that are in danger of extinction. And where it's pertinent to the area, people have been sharing their narratives of boats in their area that are under threat. So I'm learning about new vessels all the time.
Interesting. If we can start then with your background and how you got into boat building, because you don't meet many boat builders these days, or ever actually. How did you get into it? What was your interest?
Well, I lived on boats for many years in Bristol docks and then on the River Avon. So I've always had a passion for boats. I was working as a sign language interpreter with deaf people at the time when I was living on my boats. And I just had this compelling feeling that I wanted to put boats at the very core focus of my life. And I went on a journey on one of my boats, the smaller one, to the source of the Thames. And as I was journeying, it just became stronger and stronger that I wanted to really focus on boats as my primary activity. And I read an article in a boat building magazine about the Boat Building Academy in Lyme Regis. And so I decided to go and visit. And literally, as I walked through the door of that workshop, that was it. I absolutely knew it was like a homecoming. It really was.
And on that one, are there many boat building courses? Did you have a choice, or what? Did you just pick Lyme Regis because of where it was?
There are other courses, and I did look at others. There aren't many. I think there's about 3 independent colleges and probably 2 colleges, further education colleges that offer courses. There may be more, but I'm not wholly up to date, but certainly not many. I looked at others, but the feeling that I had when I walked through the Lyme Regis workshop was just a very strong instinct. And the setting is incredible. So yeah, I definitely made the right decision for me.
Euphemia, can we have slide 3 there, please? So how long was the actual Lyme Regis boat building course? And was it one person that was teaching you, or did you have, a few different teachers to teach you different parts of it? How did it work?
Well, it's a 9-month course, and one of the reasons also I was drawn to that course, you were able to build a boat of your own as part of the learning journey. So that was something that I felt that I really, really wanted to do. And Lyme Regis offer that. Not every student builds a boat, but if it's deemed a good vessel to learn from, then you can build that boat. So I was really drawn to that course for that reason as well. So it's 9 months, very intensive work. And you're working with a range of tutors who bring different skills and specialism. You're assigned a key tutor to the course, or I was then, and then they'd have different guest tutors. So there's a rich variety of people that you learn from. So it's a fantastic opportunity.
You can see in the picture here, there's a couple of boats, very much look like they're almost built at that stage. It's quite, are they just the frames? Are they the boats in?
Yes, I mean, that's just a picture of the workshop as it looked then. It looks a little bit different now. So yes, boats in build. The one in the foreground is one of mine, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
The one in the background is a Scottish fishing boat. So yeah, boats at different stages, some in skeletal form and some nearly fully planked.
So when you got there and you've like 9 months, like you said, is very intense. And you think, what, 9 months to build a boat on your own? It doesn't seem like a very long time to me. But how did you decide what kind of boat you were going to build? Do they say these are the, is there a certain type of boat that they use as a model? How does that go? How do you decide?
With the Lyme Regis course, the first, I think it's 13 weeks when I studied there, because that was in 2004, is a foundation level. Right. So you're at the bench learning all the key skills, joints, of a whole variety, and different forms of construction in a kind of mock-up form. And then the remainder of the course is working on the boats themselves. Right. And they tried to give a good range of construction in the boats that are chosen. I was really clear that I really wanted to build a traditional boat, and they allowed me to do that. So other boats in the mix were other forms of construction to allow students, a really good spectrum of learning. Right. So yes, for me, how I chose the boat, well, that's quite a story. Shall I go on to that now?
Yeah, can we actually have the learning at the bench? So there you are, learning some of the skills. And I mean, before you start, what at that time, what was maybe the hardest part of that learning? Like, what the skills that you were learning, what would have been the hardest thing, or that you found the hardest at the time, or was just everything was just a learning process?
Well, I mean, I had no formal woodworking skills before I started. I've kind of been a bit of an improviser, but no formal training at all. Right. Other people in my group were very, very skilled technically at the beginning. So when you start the foundation, everybody's at completely different levels. So for me, I was an absolute fledgling. So it's kind of just keeping your focus and keeping your calm and thinking, okay, I'll try and just learn these skills as well as I can. But obviously there are people alongside you who are much more developed in their skills at that stage. But because it's very immersive, and I think I respond very well to immersion training, you kind of really surprise yourself, you pick up those skills really quickly, and onward you go. So by the end of the foundation, things start to sort of level out a bit more, which is obviously very reassuring.
Yeah, for sure. So you're going to tell us about the boat that you chose to build, traditional boat, and you have a whole story that goes with that. Yeah, it was a certain type of boat called a Gardaí boat.
Yes, well, I read an article about the island of Unst, which is the most northern isle of Britain, of the Shetland Isles, and a gentleman called Willie Mowat, who's a boat builder on Unst, and he was overviewing and mainly the key conserver of Shetland boats for the Boat Haven Museum on Unst. And the article talked about his work and his passion for his work, and talked about the vessels. And he talked specifically about the Gardaí boat of 1882, a working boat, a herring fishing boat. And it was in the museum, and he conserved it, and it was a really amazing example, really, of a Shetland boat. And what he talked about was the sort of strength and robustness of the working boat, but the beauty of the lines. And the way that he described the essence of that working boat, I just thought this is it. This is exactly what I want to do. So I wrote to him and asked him whether he would feel it a suitable thing to embark upon, whether I could build a replica to the Gardy boat with Willie as my mentor, albeit very long distance. I also acknowledged that as an outsider to their community, he might not feel that that was appropriate.
Sure.
But it was wonderful. He telephoned me and he said, he used the word we because he was sort of embracing the community as well, said, we'd be delighted.
Great.
So at the end of the foundation stage, I went up to Unst with a dear friend to keep me company. Oh, it's a long, long journey. And when we got there, met Willie and the Gardy boat and just took lots of photographs and scribbled hundreds of notes. Also went to the local chandlery to pick up what we call rosehead copper nails, which are quite particular to the Shetland boats and can't be bought in England. And it's just an amazing experience and just so wonderful to meet Willie and have him share such amazing advice. So then when I came back in the January, I started to build the replica to the Gardy boat.
And how long, so that was still in Lyme Regis while you were a student there. And so the actual length of time to build a Gardy boat, how long was that?
So I returned to the course in the January and we launched in August.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty fast going, Gail.
Well, I mean, that was the duration of the course, and
Right.
as I say, it's very intensive, and I had amazing tutors, and it was a really extraordinary process for everybody, really, because the Shetland boats are quite different in their construction to some of the boats in England, and so some of the aspects of it were quite unusual to the tutors themselves. So it was all a great journey, and I would spend, well, initially kind of every other day on the phone to Willie, and then as I got more confident, we'd touch base sort of weekly and he would guide me through the process. And it was amazing because I was learning all these new boat component parts in English, as a whole new kind of dictionary of words.
Yeah.
But then with the Shetland boat, there was this other dimension because all the parts of the boat are in what they call Norn, which is a dialect of Norwegian.
Wow.
Which has been retained in boat building terminology.
Yeah.
Not spoken anymore, but contained in those words. And so Willie would run off these words like Humlebund, Stammeron, cave, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, which part of the boat's that? So yeah, I had to learn pretty fast, but as I say, I like immersion, so that's pretty handy.
Great stuff. And the community themselves, were people like, what is she doing this for? Why is she building a replica boat? Or did they heard from Willie, there's this woman, she's building a boat and it's like it's our Gardy boat, a replica of it. Did you have much chat with other people in the community whilst you were there, or how did that?
Mainly through Willie and his contacts, really. I was in dialogue with some of the other people connected to the Boathaven Museum as well. But what we decided was that we wanted to launch the replica boat from the same slipway as the mother boat of 1882 from the island of Unst. So once we decided that, then and everybody knew I'd be returning, then we knew we could have a real gorgeous focus on the launching, involving all the community on that day. So yeah, it was amazing. So the first waters that she tasted, so to speak, were the same as the mother boat.
Which must have been extraordinary and quite an experience, quite a moving experience, I imagine, for you and how did Willie react to that?
Well, it was amazing. it's an incredible journey just to get to Unst. It's about 14 hours on the ferry from Aberdeen.
Wow.
And it was so lovely because I wrote to the ferry company and wondered if they might give her free passage. And they said, yes, we'd be delighted. And I kind of said, can she come back as well? do you want to keep her on Shetland? And they said, oh no, you can bring her back as well. But when we pulled up at the port, she was all under tarpaulin and everything on the trailer. But all the dock workers just, that's a Shetland boat, that's a Shetland boat, because you could see the shape so strongly from beneath the covers.
Wow.
And they were so excited about it. It was just so lovely. We got there, I mean, it was August, but we got there just by the skin of our teeth because there was a howling gale. And the last ferry across to Unst, we were on it basically, and then the ferry service stopped. So it was really, really lucky. And when I got there, I mean, it was torrential, but Willie said, come on then, let's have a look. Let's have a look. And I didn't say earlier, but Willie always said that it's the second plank in a Shetland boat that is the most critical to determine the shape. And so over the phone at that stage, I was like, well, but how do I know if it's right, you know? And he just said, you've got to rely on your eye and your instinct and what you know about the boats. So when he then pulled that cover off, I was like, oh my goodness, I hope that second plank is okay. He was really chuffed. And I'd saved a little bit of work on the blocks that support the oars, so we could work together a little bit before launch day. And Willie had made the oars for the boats. That was lovely.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, really special. And so is that you in the boat? Or is that you inside the boat here? Because we have the picture.
Ah, yes. Well, that's me and Willie. Basically, he chose the day of the island show to launch the boat. So after all the Shetland ponies had been judged, and the marquee in the distance on the photograph is the showground. And then we all walked across to the slipway, and Willie took an oar and I took an oar, and out to sea we went. And it was the most remarkable feeling. You can't help but be kind of nervous when you launch your first boat, but you have to put faith in that evolution of form and function, that it just performs beautifully. And she just glided across the water with just the most amazing ease. It was just incredible. So I was just overwhelmed. It was just fantastic.
I bet for your first boat. I mean, what a story. And how long is the boat? How long is that?
18 foot.
It's an 18-footer. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it has a very beautiful shape. And for people like myself who just like, you see a fishing boat, a traditional fishing boat, you know, sometimes you see slightly different shapes, but you wouldn't know what determines that a Shetland boat from, say, another type of boat. What would you say is the most distinctive kind of characteristics of this boat?
Well, that's what I love about boats, and particularly working boats. It's that blend of form and function that's come about, so they serve the purpose of their job. It's not by chance, and I just find that fascinating. Every hull shape has a story to tell about its job, its shoreline, how it's launched. It's just fascinating. It really is. So with the Shetland boat, you've got that lovely shear line, the line of the top plank, that rise to give it, you know, really strong seaworthiness. Down in the keel area in the first plank, it's a very strong V shape coming up from the keel. So it sort of extends the depth of the keel in a sense by the planking coming out from that shape. So again, gives it greater stability at sea. I mean, every boat has just got so many influences upon it, depending on its purpose, and that's what I'm just fascinated by.
And did you say earlier, I think you said earlier as well, that they use this for herring fishing?
That's right, yes.
Um,
The Gardy boat is what they call the Eela boat, which is the kind of baby of the family of Shetland boats. They're called Shetland model boats. And so she would have been the bait boat. She'd have gone out and sourced the bait. And then the next size up is a four-reen, a four-oared boat. And the next size up again is a six-reen, a six-oared boat. So the Gardy boat is an Eela, so would have been the bait boat.
Baby boat. Okay, it's very beautiful to look at in the pictures there. I mean, what type of wood did you use for this, and does it depend on the type of boat that you're building? Are they different? Do you use different wood for different parts, or are they usually the same type of wood? Because obviously I'm assuming it has to be hardwood, or no? Am I wrong?
The replica here is in larch. The planking's larch, and the backbone and all the kind of skeletal structure is oak. But Willie, said that for generations, most of their wood would have come across from Norway. There are no trees on Unst, so it would be imported across. So really, with working boats, the timber that is used is usually what's accessible and around. So in other areas, for example, in Dorset, where I am now, many of the working boats originally would have been in elm. Of course, that's very scarce now, but when they were built, it was plentiful. So you're using what is around you, but also the particular characteristics of the timber are obviously vital. So, for example, elm, it's quite mischievous to work with. It can cut and twist and warp. But once it's captured in the hull shape, it's the most fantastic planking timber, because it's very, very resistant to splitting, and it's got a lot of flexibility in it. Boats need flexibility, and elm's amazing for that. So yeah, the timbers are just extraordinary, and their habit and their characteristics. That's really why I'm drawn also to traditional wooden boat building, is because you have to become very familiar with the essence of that wood and build a relationship with it and work with it and sort of persuade it on its journey from tree to sea, as I call it.
And are most boats that you're building traditional boats, then the hull, the main bits, all you use the same wood? I mean, they're all the parts, constituent parts of it are made of the same wood. So the one in that you mentioned in Devon, or in Lyme Regis, there's the other one. I forget what it was now, but the leveret.
The leret,
Yeah,
yes.
leret. Is that made of all the same wood?
So the entire boat, you mean?
Yeah.
The planking is elm.
Okay.
And the skeletal structure is oak.
Okay.
Often the kind of hard bones of the boat, so to speak, are oak. Okay. And planking may vary according to the region.
So as well as these types of boats, you've also made, and I think we have, if you move slide 6, you've also made Cornish pilot gig boats. Can you tell us like what they are, and if we can have see a picture of them there as well? Oh, there you are doing the planking of one. Yeah. So was this then after the first boat you built, you obviously loved it and it worked out really well, and you went on to build other boats. So tell us about the Cornish pilot gig. What is that?
Yes, well, I went on to build other replicas. I actually use the term daughter boats because I see it as sort of breathing life into a new generation of these historic vessels. And they're not just a clone of the mother boat in that sense. The Cornish pilot gig is the most amazing example, really, of the revival of a working craft. So all the modern day Cornish pilot gigs are all daughter boats or replicas of a boat called Trafai of 1838, which still exists and is still rowed in Newquay. Obviously, they're now used primarily for sport, and in their original context, they were taking a pilot out to incoming ship that was unfamiliar with the rocky territory they were coming into. So they've got a different purpose now in a modern day context, but the revival is just an amazing example of a working boat. Yeah, just kind of totally, people are just smitten by it. It's just wonderful. So when I returned after building the Shetland boat, I went for a short while over to Ireland and did a mini apprenticeship there, and then returned to build the first Cornish pilot gig for Lyme Regis Gig Club. And that was in conjunction with the Boat Building Academy where I trained. So they were the commissioners of the boat and I was the project leader. At that time, Ralph Bird, the late Ralph Bird, was the boat builder who was really the key person behind the revival of the craft. And he was on the cusp of retiring, and he offered to be my mentor for the building of that first gig. So that was an amazing privilege. And they are extraordinary. They are 32 foot long. So the Gardy boat's daughter was 18 foot long. So it gives you a sense of the different length. And they're only 4'10" in the beam. That's across the boat at the midships.
Narrow, yeah.
They're very narrow. So they're like a sort of stretched limousine version of the Gardy boat. But they're similar construction in that they're clinker, and that's where the planks overlap, as you can see here in the picture.
Ah, right.
But of course, because of their length, there are other challenges to building a gig. And also because they are now part of a racing class, they're measured 3 times during the build. So you have to be very, very particular about your standards and your measurements throughout the build.
Right. And so, and these are, if we can see the next slide as well. Oh, yeah, that's such a beautiful, that's just like art, looking at art there. It's such, the shape, beautiful. These are racing gigs as well. So they're used for racing.
Yes, I mean, in their original context in the 1800s, although they were used to take a pilot out to the ships, speed was of the essence, because basically the first gig that got to the ship got the fee, the pilot's fee. So they would be very competitive with each other in that context. So they were always built for speed, but that was about their livelihood. Now it's about them being a racing boat for sport. So they're incredibly fast. And it's just incredible to see how that class of boat has just exploded in terms of interest. So there are probably, well, we haven't had a World Championships for a little while because of the pandemic, but I think at the last championship there was about 161 new, replica gigs on the start line. So it's quite phenomenal.
That's quite a lot. And so they're still racing them. And these are particular to Cornwall. There aren't like similar boats elsewhere around the world in.
Well, there are lots of different types of gigs.
Okay.
But a Cornish pilot gig is very specific. And the scantlings, the dimensions of the components are pared down to an absolute minimum, as they were in 1838 in Trafai, to give as lightweight as possible, and also the focus on speed. So, for example, here in the rib cage picture, we have there are 62 ribs altogether in a gig, and each rib, if you can see, I think in the picture, they're notched out, cut out round every plank ledge.
Wow.
So it's making them as lean and also as flexible and well, in performance as possible.
It looks incredible. Could we actually see the next page? Because I think we have the 3 sisters. Yes. And you built all of these?
Yes, they're my girls. So Rebel was first. That was the one that I built with the Boat Building Academy with Ralph as my mentor.
Okay.
The next year I went on to build Black Ven, and then the club paused for breath a little bit, and then in 2012 I built Tempest. So she's the youngest sister. So they're all built to that racing class spec. Yeah, that's my wooden girls.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that you mentioned there about building by eye, I mean, does that come naturally? How can you be taught that, or how is that? That's something, a special skill.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, with the Cornish pilot gigs, for example, there's a spec and a construction drawing, and you have to follow that. So in that sense, you're not building by eye, but every aspect of boat building, you are using your eye and training your eye to ensure that the lines are sweet on the eye. The lines are fair, as we call it. So particularly with clinker construction, where the planks overlap, the lines of the planks are very evident. And so even with the construction drawings for the gigs, every plank that you lay on the boat, you're eyeing it in to make sure that it's sweet on the eye. In terms of building by eye as a whole process, when you don't have construction drawings, there are lots of different methods of doing that. But usually I've done that using a mother boat as the reference. And then you may have just maybe 1, 2, 3 building molds that are temporary molds or frames in the construction, and the rest is about using your eye. It's about building your confidence with it. I think at first I find it difficult to trust my eye and say, but is that right? And I'd look at it from this angle and lots of different perspectives, and over time you learn to trust it, I think, and gain confidence in that your eye does tell you when something doesn't look right. But you do need to keep looking, stand back, look from different angles, and then hopefully it all turns out sweet on the eye.
Well, they are very sweet on the eye. They're just yeah, beautiful. How do you come up with the names, actually?
Oh, the gigs.
Yeah.
They're all chosen by the club members.
Okay.
All have a link to Lyme Regis. Rebel is because Lyme was always called that rebellious town, and there was a rebellion on Monmouth Beach, which is the beach next to the boat building academy. So they thought that was a good name, and also she was the first gig to be built by a woman, and they thought that was kind of a bit rebellious as well. So yeah, they're all chosen by club members voting, and the highest votes got the name, but they all have a link to Lyme Regis's history.
Okay, I mean, it's a beautiful part of the world, Lyme Regis. I've visited it often, so it's really nice to see the boats there. And we're coming now to Chesil Beach and the story of Vera. So if we maybe go on to, I think we have slide 9 for that one. And what happened? How did you come across this boat and start to build a replica of it?
Well, just along from Lyme Regis is the Chesil Beach. If you're not familiar with the area, it's a 22-mile stretch of steep, stony scree, most incredible beach, stretching right the way along to Portland. And obviously I started looking at lots of examples of boats that were in danger of extinction, but it became very clear there was one right on the doorstep. And a gentleman approached me and said, have you heard about the lerrets? In the 1800s, they were plentiful, and now I believe there's only 2 left. And this is a gentleman who had sort of made researching the lerrets his passion, David Carter in Weymouth. And through his guidance and through word of mouth with other people, I then came across Vera of 1923, and her owner at that time, Ian Reader. Vera was no longer going to sea, and nor was Ian, and she was well cared for, but retired in a field just this side of Weymouth. Okay. The more I researched the boats, it became clear that there was a fantastic story attached to that type of boat, and also to the fishing, the mackerel fishing, and the communities attached to that activity. It just was extraordinary. But what was obviously most compelling was the fact that really there were only 2 left. There were others sort of in tatters, but in terms of ones that had retained their shape, just 2 lerrets left when there were hundreds in the 1800s sitting perched on the beach. So it felt vital to do something about it. So I applied for funding from the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust to build a replica, a daughter boat, to Vera, and worked very closely with the gentleman you see inside the boat on this slide, Roy Gollop, who'd built boats by eye all his working life. And so he was my mentor for this project. I'm very lucky to have such lovely, lovely mentors for each of these boats. And so he's here using his own methods to record the shape internally of Vera, so that we can then transpose that for me to be able to then build the daughter boat.
How big is Vera? She doesn't look that long.
She's 17 foot, but the characteristics of the leret, which makes them look shorter, is that they're incredibly beamy, incredibly wide.
Wide, yeah.
And that's, again, as we were talking about earlier, because of the nature of the job that they do and the terrain that they're launched from. So they're pushed from the very top of the scree, fully loaded, fully crewed, and they shoot down the pebbles. And when they hit the sea, you think they're just going to sink. It's just phenomenal, but they don't. They just bob up like a duckling. It's absolutely amazing. And it's the shape of the hull that does that. So very beamy to length, very flat floored in the middle section, and then these very strong double-ended pinched ends coming in to allow for immense buoyancy in the hull shape itself.
Okay, amazing. I mean, and that's what is interesting as well, is like the type of waters they're going from or where they're launched from also makes a difference to the shape of them and how they're made. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you couldn't have a more contrasting boat to the gig than the leret, because it's very beamy to the length and not built for speed. Not built for speed at all. These boats were used as boats for rescue, shipwrecks, and they're immensely seaworthy, but they're not fast in any way. But my goodness, they are strong, and they are totally designed to withstand the challenges of the Chesil Beach.
Why, like you said, there was quite a lot of these boats, but there was only 2 left. Why have the boats almost become extinct? Because lack of use, people don't use them anymore. What is that?
It's a really complex picture for the leret and for many other craft that are teetering on the edge. Certainly for the leret, in many ways it's probably about the changing nature of communities, in that to launch a leret, you need really ideally 10 people. You'd have 5 in the boat, and you need a good handful to launch her from the scree and to bring her back ashore as well. So when they were at their height, people from the age of 5 right through to very elderly gentlemen usually were all part of this activity, and everybody would muck in together during the mackerel season. So it was part of everyday life that you would launch your leret and go out to sea, and it would augment the income that you would have from your day job. I suppose over generations, people then start to work further away from their home. Communities are not so bound, it's more fragmented. So the nature of people's lives changed, but also the competition for fishing from other vessels that were obviously not of such a traditional nature. That was obviously a reason why they went into decline when there are motor powered craft, and also perhaps also the stock, the actual fish themselves. People that's in decline as well. So it's quite a complex mixture. And then of course the people to build them, the people who have the skills to build them, they're becoming ever more scarce.
Yeah, I mean, there are people still building boats, but and like I said, there are quite a few boat building academies and things around the UK. However, the difference in what you do is the building of traditional, with wood, traditional boats. There's not many. That's quite a rare thing these days.
Yes, I mean, when I was training, my tutor, one of my tutors, Jack Chippendale, he said, it's going to be tough if you want to focus primarily just on traditional boats. He was a pioneer of modern wood construction. So, he said, you might struggle. But I just felt so passionate and about traditional craft that I wanted to keep that as my key focus. So I've just tried to keep my life pretty simple, really. But I think, boat builders perhaps have to work in a wider spectrum quite often, and repair perhaps fiberglass boats and restore fiberglass boats and modern wood construction. And of course, that's what they have to do. I think for myself, I just wanted to focus on the traditional and as I say, just keep my life simple so that I could do that.
Actually, where is Little Sea now, and where is the Gardy boat that you built? Where did they sit now? Who has them, or where are they?
Well, the Gardy boat's daughter, Georgie MacDonald, I always intended to keep her for myself.
Okay.
With her name is evocative of my family, my two grandmothers, and as I said, the ferry company did allow me to bring her back. So she's my own personal boat. Little Sea obviously was built with great appreciation from the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust. This is her launch, actually, her launch day slide.
Oh, you can really see her width there. Yeah,
can't you? Yeah, it's quite amazing, isn't it?
Really.
So I kind of see myself as custodian of her, really, and custodian of trying to preserve the lineage of the Leret. So she's used as an exhibition boat. She's become a little bit of a TV star. She's been on TV quite a few times, which is rather lovely. So yeah, obviously she is the next generation craft, and is used in a very, very different way than her original mother. So she's not used as a fishing boat, but as an exhibition boat.
Okay. I mean, one of the things that you also do is you're collecting stories as you go along, and so the boats that are becoming extinct that you're building the daughter boats of, the replicas, but you're also getting to talk to in communities about their boats and collecting stories. What what kind of stories do you get, and do you also end up telling those stories yourself, relating those and passing them on too?
Well, this picture actually is a really good example. When I was building the daughter boat, many people came forward with their memories of Leret fishing. Word of mouth sort of spread along the coast, and people would come and find me in the workshop and share their stories. It was phenomenal, and a lot of excitement from those people, in their 70s and 80s, because they never thought they'd see a new Lerret being built. I think it was 40 years had passed since a new Lerret had been built. So as I was building her, it became really clear that there was the story of the Lerret as well that was teetering on the edge, those oral histories, and they needed to be captured and saved. So I applied for some heritage lottery money through Lyme Regis Museum, and we set up a project with the curator at that time, which enabled us to record the oral histories of the people from the Lerret fishing community, which is fantastic. So we've got a beautiful archive there now of those memories, and the Lerret is just one example of, I'm sure, many memories of other working boats along our shoreline. For me, the voice of the community at the heart of the boat is obviously vital, that it's heard.
Brilliant. Then we have something called the Storyboard, and I think we have a picture. Yes, we have the picture of it here. And so where did this idea come from? It's like a museum, or it's something that you take on the road with you, Gail. Can you tell us about this? Because I think this is a beautiful idea. I love it. Yeah, tell us about this one.
Maybe if it's possible, we could go back to the previous slide. Yeah, that's lovely, because then it gives you an external view first. So if you turn yourself upside down, you might recognize the roof of the Storyboat. It's Vera.
Right.
So Vera, as I said before, no longer seaworthy, but obviously then gave her lines to the daughter boat Little Sea. But I wanted to give her a new lease of life, and I thought, it was actually sparked by an idea of something that I saw way back on the island of Unst. Wow. When I saw an upturned boat, a clinker boat, being used as a sheep shelter. Often when boats are no longer seaworthy, especially in island communities, they'll use them for something useful. So I had an image of that sort of imprinted in my brain, really, and crawled inside that shelter at the time and just thought, oh, it's so amazing to be sort of cocooned really by the boat. And so when I thought of Vera and giving her a new lease of life, I thought, this is it. I'm going to turn her upside down and make her into a mobile maritime museum and share the stories of those Lerret fishermen and women. Wow. And so I worked with a local wheelwright, Mike Rowland and Son, to make a wagon that's totally bespoke to the shape of Vera's hull, double-ended and beamy. So yeah, we worked together to create the wagon, and then I built the structure just in the way that I would a normal clinker boat, but slightly different order of play. But the walls, the light larch walls that you see, the golden walls of the Storyboat, are clinker and copper riveted, just the same as I would with a boat that goes to sea. And then Vera is almost unchanged, apart from she's upside down, in her hull shape. I only had to take out some of the seats, but the rest of her is totally as you see her. So with the slide of looking inside her, you can see her rib cage above us here, totally intact. And I'm sharing the stories and what I call the memory objects of the fishing community with the children here.
Okay. What did the children, I mean, what sort of experience is it for them? There you have the children doing some copper riveting. Brilliant. So they very hands-on. And the kind of stories, do they get it wrapped up in it? Do they ask you lots of questions about the traditional boat building and the stories that you've been collecting?
It's amazing, really. I mean, firstly, they see the space as a place for them, really. It's a tiny space and you're cocooned inside. Yeah. It's very other, and they jump aboard and just see it as a den, a really exciting den. And then we kind of settle down, and there's this kind of hush then. It's almost like Vera's rib cage just calms everybody down, and we just take in what's around you. And then I start to tell the story of Vera, and they just seem to connect with it, whether they've got any connection with the sea or boats or not. They just seem to really connect with her story. And then the memory objects linked to the fishermen, they're just, yeah, really ignited by them. It's just wonderful to see. And then we do a bit of copper riveting and a bit of boat building in miniature, and then, yeah, they capture a memory, one that's particularly resonant from the fishermen, and write or draw their capturing of that on the little miniature plank that they've made and riveted. Okay. And they take that away with them with such enormous pride. It's wonderful. Brilliant. And quite often we're in residence for quite a while at a school and work with a number of classes. And when it comes to the end of the residency, the children, they just don't want Vera to go. You know, they're just hugging her and saying, "Don't go." It's just really, really wonderful.
Brilliant. We're almost up, and I've just seen one of our attendees, Matt, said, "Sorry, I have to go. This is so interesting. Thank you." Great. Thank you, Matt, for joining us. There's also a part that you do, which is singing and songs, which I can imagine the children would be particularly into as well. You make up your own, you've written your own songs and you sing?
Yes, I mean, this slide is the end of a residency at a village near Lyme Regis called Beer, and the children, as you see, are processing with the Storyboat. And my colleague Diana taught them lots of different songs of the sea during that week. And after we landed here, we all gathered round and they sang those songs to the audience up the bank and all round. And it was just, yeah, a lovely encapsulation really of the stories of Vera and the songs of the sea. I do write my own songs of the sea that I perform with Diana and another friend, Penny, which, yeah, they're encapsulations of characters, real and imagined.
Right. I mean, it's a multi-layered thing that you do, Gail, from the very process of building the boats that go out on sea, that are working, as well as the fact that they're replicas and daughter boats of these becoming extinct, the boats that are becoming extinct. And then you go to the schools and you collect the stories. The thing with the kids as well, I can imagine adults in there having the same experience in a way, because that sort of the calmness that you talked about, and it's like I'm sure that adults become kind of kid-like in there too. So it's a really beautiful thing that you're doing. And someone panelists have just said, or sorry, an attendee just said, from Lisa, thank you, Lisa, your passion for traditional boats is infectious. I'd love to nestle under the ribs of Vera. Immersive experience, I'm sure. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like I'd love to check that out now. I want to go there. I want to be in it. What's next for you, Gail? What, are you going to continue this, and what other boats are you going to build?
Well, I mean, Disappearing Lines workshops, we're carrying on for a few more sessions yet, and maybe there will be a second tour, who knows? But obviously, as I'm traveling around, I'm unearthing, sadly, many examples of working boats that are in danger of extinction. So maybe there's another daughter boat on the way. We shall see. We shall see.
We hope so. We hope so. Another person said, thank you so much, Gail. This is from Daniel Carpenter. We are at the Heritage Crafts Association, are hoping to do a symposium on endangered boat building skills in 2022. So that's next year, to feed into the next edition of the Red List of Endangered Crafts. We would love, we'll be in touch to talk about it. So yeah, Gail, I'm sure you will. And thanks, Daniel, for coming along, and Lisa and Matt as well. really extraordinary. There's Vera at rest. Okay, so she sits in a beautiful wood when she's not being used by the going around to the schools. Do you go around the whole country, or do you just, is it specific places, or how do schools get in touch with you?
Well, I've done various counties. I'm open to invites. I mean, obviously Vera's life as a storyboat has been on pause through the pandemic because she's a very intimate space. So I really hope that she can come out of the woods again and enchant people, hopefully next year.
I mean, it's a really wonderful idea, and I can just imagine being in there, and I can imagine as a kid how fabulous that must be. So thank you so much for telling us some of your stories this evening. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to Friday at the museum when you will be doing the first of the Disappearing Lines workshops. I'll be there with you to check everything out, and it's been amazing, and I wish you well with all of the endeavors that you do. What you're doing is amazing, just keeping things like this going, that these boats and their stories aren't dead because of people like yourself. We have another person, Mary Lewis at the Heritage Crafts. She said, hi Mary here, also from Heritage Crafts. If we do have a symposium, then we must have Vera there.
She would love that. She would love that.
Thank you, Gail, and thank you, Euphemia, for working the Zoom tonight. If you have any other things, I'm sure, Gail, how can they get in touch with you? How can people get in touch with you?
They can find my website, which is under my name, and there's a contact page on that. So yes, please do be in touch. And the website gives you a kind of overview of my work, because builder of boats, teller of stories, and keeper of memories.
Brilliant. And it's Gail McGarva, if you want to see it there, or just put it in there. So anybody can type that in and they will find you and find many things about you, actually. It's been a joy to talk to you, Gail. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on Friday.
Lovely. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been wonderful.
Great stuff. Thanks very much. And
Thank
you. Thank you to everybody who tuned in tonight. Lots of people saying thank you. Expansive Journey, builder of boats, collector of stories. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you.